All right, we are live, and I am super excited to bring on this amazing person today within our Healthy Runner Facebook group. So if you want to get faster, if you want to feel stronger, then this is the episode for you. Tune in to hear Rachel's story on how she overcame this common roadblock and got consistent with her training to shave 2 minutes off her 5K time and get a half marathon PR this past weekend, despite it being a tough year for many of us runners across the country. So, Rachel, welcome to the show and thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Duane. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to get into this. What we're going to really be doing, guys, is we are going to hear Rachel's story and how she got stronger, how she got faster with her running, shaving time off her 5K time, as well as getting that PR for her half marathon goal race. But Rachel, let's get started with our dynamic warm up, because I know you know the importance of a good dynamic warm up now. So tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Thanks, Duane. So I'm Rachel. I live in Utah right now. I'm working on a PhD at Utah State University. So I'm studying ecology, and I'm really into wetlands and all things biogeochemistry and wetland ecology. So that's what I'm working on. And I also have 2 kids. So I have a 6-year-old and 3-year-old boy who keep me, and a husband who keep me very occupied. And yeah, this has been a busy time for me, but running has been such an important thing for me that I get to do on my own. That's a stress reliever, and just has been really good to me this past year. Yeah.
Yeah. So like my wife says, you have like 3 kids essentially, right? Because you have a husband as well. And how far along are you with your PhD?
I'm in my 5th year, so I'm wrapping things up, which is more work than it seems like it should be. But so I will be graduating in December. So this will be an end of an era for me working on a PhD.
Super exciting and super proud of you. As we've spoken before, having gone through the blood, sweat, and tears of PhD, and you're doing, like I had 2 kids at the time, and mine were like your kids' age, and they were little. And with you being mom in the house, I even give you so much more credit, because there are things that only moms can do. Let's be honest, for those parents out there. And I give you a ton of credit. So that honestly makes your story today even more remarkable, with everything that you're juggling around. So I think many of the mother runners here in our Healthy Runner community are going to be able to relate, with you kind of working, doing PhD, having a family, running the household, keeping your husband on track. I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this tonight. But tell us, when did you start running, Rachel?
So I first started running in middle school when I decided I wanted to do cross country. So in middle school and high school, I did cross country and track. Loved it. It was a blast. It's how I met all of my friends, and it's just an important part of my growing up. But I grew up in Houston, and our cross country was really we ran 2 miles for our races. So I never did any real longer races. And when I came up to Utah to go to school, I just stopped running. I'm not really sure why. I was just busy, and I just took a really long break. And then last year during COVID, I just decided that I was going to start running again. I had run a little bit on and off over the years, but nothing serious. And yeah, just decided to go for it. Since I couldn't do my regular activities. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I'm sure there are many who for those that are on the live stream, if you guys started kind of getting back into running, or you just started running when COVID hit a year ago, just type in me into the comment box. I'm curious to see how many did that as well. But prior to starting back up for COVID, did you run any road races at all, kind of as an adult or post motherhood?
Yeah, I had run a few, one of which was a half marathon that I was not prepared for at all. Had I had been running very casually. Maybe my longest run was 6 miles, 8 miles, maybe. I wasn't even really measuring. I was just running. I didn't have a watch or anything. And my sister had been training for this half marathon with her husband. And 2 weeks before the race, he hurt his knee and couldn't run. So she begs me to do it with her. And I just, for some reason, thought, this can't be that bad. I'll run really slow. It's going to be fine. I'll just do my first half marathon. And no, it was really difficult. I was not prepared, and things were all fine and well until about mile 8 or 9, when I was just totally done, had to walk a bit, survived. But it was definitely not a good experience at all. Couldn't walk the rest of the day. Just
Yeah. So that's what not to do, is what you're saying, is don't just jump into a half marathon without training at all and having a 6 mile as your long run. Okay. All right. So now we've learned what not to do. Have you done any half marathons after that, before the one that you just ran this past weekend?
Yeah, so I did run a half marathon just this past November that I did train for. And it went
Nice.
much better.
Nice. Okay. So that one you did train for, and what was, and I think this just gives some perspective, not that the time is important, because we all run our different times, right? And we're all in different stages and have different fitness levels. But what was your time for that one in the fall in November?
Yeah, it was 1:45:43, I think. Not positive on seconds. I
Yeah.
was
So that,
a mile.
yeah. So that's definitely pretty impressive, right? So you were definitely, and how would you describe that race? Was that like the worst race ever, where you like pushed yourself to like the limits that you felt like was the limits?
It was definitely difficult. I put everything I had into the race. At the end, I averaged an 8-minute pace per mile, but my last 2 miles or so, I was at like a 8:40, 8:45. I had slowed down because I was really feeling it at the end. I hadn't, I don't know. I think I hadn't paced myself quite as well as I could have there, because the end was just really tough. But the race itself was mostly downhill, like most of the whole way, which was helpful.
Okay.
Pushing me along.
Nice. That is helpful. Yeah. And we find that very common in a lot of us kind of new to running specific distances, right? It gets tricky to be able to pace yourself. And I think we can kind of relate to that, of races that we, went out too fast or didn't pace. So definitely with experience, that will improve for those that are listening. Rachel, let's go to kind of what was the main issue when we started, when you had reached out, or I had reached out to you. I can't even remember at this point. So I know it was December. I know it was kind of December. So that would have been a month after your half marathon that you ran in the fall. What was kind of the main issue or main problem you were having at that point that made you kind of decide to sign up for a coaching program?
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, I think I'll actually step back and tell the story of how I first found your podcast.
Oh yeah, cool.
Okay. So I was training for this half marathon, and I was starting to get ITBS, or iliotibial band syndrome. You can tell me that I'm saying that wrong. And I just was having a lot of knee pain, and so I started doing research. What should I do about this? And this is how I found you and your podcast. And so I found some exercises that you had recommended for that, and I started implementing them, just on my own, and really saw improvement, and was able, that totally went away for me, which was fantastic, because I really had never had any injuries ever as a runner. And I was starting to feel very down about it. I'm not going to be able to run because my knee hurts too bad. So that was kind of my first experience. And then I bought a new pair of running shoes and immediately took them out and ran 10 miles in them. I'm just making all the mistakes for everybody else so they can learn from my experience.
No, this is great. This is great.
And yeah, really had a lot of pain in my foot. And this was like right before my half marathon, like 2 weeks before is when I had done this. And I reached out to you and I scheduled an online, we did a virtual appointment, and you helped me, you gave me some exercises, because at this point I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to do my race. And so, I implemented those. I did my race. It was fine. I didn't have any foot pain during my race. And then after my race, I think that really pushed it, and my foot was really bothering me. And I decided that when it was time for me to train again, that I needed some professional guidance so that I could just have a better plan and avoid having more injuries in the future. So that was my main reason for wanting to get going in the coaching program.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And for those that haven't listened to last week's episode, we actually did share some tips, because you talked about IT band syndrome, and we actually shared all of our tips. And since that point in time when you heard the podcast, last week I had finalized, I kind of put that in PDF version. So now there is an actual free PDF version for those that are listening on how to overcome IT band syndrome. So if you are struggling with the knee pain that Rachel speaks of, we do have a full kind of training, as well as kind of PDF version with the video links of what you need to do to kind of get over this problem and or prevent it from coming back in the future. So if anyone's watching this in Facebook on the live stream, if you guys type in IT band into the comment box or PDF, I will know what that means, and I will shoot you the link so you can grab that, and I will do my best to remember to put that in the show notes on the podcast. But if for some reason it is not there, then just reach out to me and I will shoot it over to you. All right. So that's kind of the main reason why, we were thinking back in December that your foot was still hurting a little bit. You got through your half marathon race, but your foot was hurting, and you were like, well, maybe I need to seek out kind of someone who knows a little bit about running and these kind of aches and pains, so you can kind of get along the right path. Okay, awesome. And I'm glad that we did connect, and I'm glad that we kind of started you in our coaching program January 1st. So we were sparking off the new year, and we were kind of setting this first training block of 2021 off with really focusing on kind of building strength during this time period. And for those, again, that don't know, the first live stream we did in 2021, I really talked about training cycles and how you need to cycle and plan out your calendar year in advance as a runner in order to prevent kind of overuse type injuries. And there should be different focus points throughout your year. And, the beginning for most runners kind of coming out of winter, it's a great time to really double down on your strength, plyometric training, so jump training in order to run, and then really building up a base and a foundation for kind of your runs for the rest of the season, essentially, when you get into whenever your kind of race season is. So kind of giving everyone a little context there. So I guess, what do you feel like, what was really the progress that you made during, the past 12 weeks of being in this coaching program?
So the first thing is that I could just feel myself getting stronger during my runs. So I had never done a serious strength program where I was following a schedule and doing all of the workouts and really being accountable and doing all these things. And so I really noticed my progress the most during my tempo runs each week. And I was starting out with running 2-mile tempo runs, and I was running at about an 8-minute pace. And I felt like that was about what I could do. And then I don't know how long it was, 4 or 5 weeks in, I remember I was running a tempo run, and I was running a 3-mile tempo run now, and I was in my last mile, and I just felt like my legs were stronger. I just felt like, wait a second, I can run faster. Like, it was just this really cool moment for me where I just could feel the effects all like all of a sudden very strongly of my training, that my legs were strong and they were ready to go. And I mean, by the end of it, I was running my 3-mile tempo runs at a 7:19 pace. So I'd really cut off a lot of time. And I know it's because I was doing this training, and because of course I was doing my running and being so consistent, and that I had a plan that was custom for me and for what my goals were.
Yeah, and you really executed that plan. So, everything that we're going to talk about tonight, we'll probably talk about some principles and things like that. But I think what's most important for you guys to take home as well is that Rachel put in the work, right? She was motivated. She is obviously a very driven person with everything that we talked about that she juggles in her life, just like so many of you that are listening. And for someone like Rachel, who has that motivation and is willing to put the work in, it's really a matter of being your guide, right? So I'm really guiding you along the path and presenting the plan that you need for your unique needs. And I guess another question I have for you, you had mentioned tempo run. So just in case, right, we have a lot of new beginner runners in our community. If you guys don't know, I have done an episode before on 3 types of runs. And if you haven't heard that episode yet, just put types of runs in the comment box and I will shoot that to you. But that was an in-depth episode where I really described the 3 main types of runs, the most common ones, which is your easy run or your kind of conversational pace run, and then tempo, which is your lactate threshold run, and then intervals. So I know you mentioned tempo run. Did you do any tempo runs for your half marathon in the fall that you were training for on your own?
Yes, I did do some.
Okay. All right. Nice. So you were doing that. Were you doing any interval work at all?
I was doing intervals as well. And I was doing, when I was training on my own, I was doing 400-meter intervals, but this past time around, I was doing 800 meters.
Ooh, okay. All right. No, great point that you brought that up, because that is a common mistake. And I talked about it in that types of run, is a lot of us, when we jump to intervals, we do the shorter stuff because it sounds easier, maybe that you're not running as long, or you think if you run faster for a shorter distance, that's going to help you. But you really need to think about the event that you're training for. So if you're doing anything longer than a 5K, 400-meter sprints or interval training are short intervals, which is not going to translate into your goal race event of either a 10K, half marathon, or definitely not a full marathon, right? So you do want to think about longer intervals and really building up, maybe starting with 800s and then repeat 1200s and eventually repeat miles, which are a lot harder to do and a lot harder workouts. But those would be the things you want to think about in your training. So even just making, that was a considerable change, I guess, in your training from what you're doing in the fall to kind of what we had designed for you. So I think it's good to think about, and this is always a reflective process, guys. Anytime you finish a training cycle, like Rachel just finished, a 12-week training cycle and ran her race, it's always good to look back and say, okay, what was the result I got? And why did, right? We reflect on that. What were the good things? Why do I think I achieved that? What were the bad things? And maybe it just comes down to you had the worst weather in the world, or, your nutrition, your life, your stress that was going on the week of your race. And that's the reason why you didn't perform well. It could be as simple as that, or it could be related to your training, right? Or it could be related to you suffering through a running related injury that you were just dead set on. I'm going to run this half marathon no matter what. If I'm going to be dragging my leg across the finish line, I'm going to run it no matter what. So it's always good to kind of reflect upon differences in your training. Okay. So the intervals were different from the fall. Tempo runs, it sounds like you weren't as consistent from your answer. It sounds like in the fall. You weren't. Okay.
I don't remember doing tempo runs every week.
Okay. All right. And then that's another thing that we talk about in that podcast episode is really doing tempo runs first. And again, it's a common mistake I see in a lot of plans is those jumping right from easy runs to intervals. And then most people running the easy runs too fast. And they're basically running their easy runs at tempo pace because they feel like they're working a 7, 8 out of 10 scale, right? Rating of perceived exertion, where they're really running those too fast. And then, so you don't get that full training effect of your body, the physiologic body adaptations that occur with those different types of runs. So those are things that, those of you listening, just kind of highlighting some educational points as Rachel shares her story here. All right. So you really felt like you were getting stronger. Those tempo runs, you were running them faster and you were kind of shaving time off. What did that do to your confidence with running?
Yeah, I felt really good. I just felt like what I was doing was working, which is a great feeling when you're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do strength training. Spending a lot of time running. It's really nice that your training is working. It was really validating for me and just was really encouraging. And I was excited. It was really fun.
Yeah, no, and it was cool seeing that confidence. I could tell, every time we met. So Rachel and I met like on a monthly basis doing like video coaching sessions and kind of touching base on where she was and answering questions. And then also talking about what's the plan for the kind of next phase, the next month of training. And it was just really cool seeing your confidence level like increase, like literally with every call. And it was, you ask great questions, of course. Come on, you're getting a PhD. Of course, you need to question things, right? So you had like really great questions, which I loved. But it was really cool seeing your confidence improve throughout the training. I know you mentioned the strength program. What did you find that was different or beneficial? Anything that you noticed that, I don't know, was different from like different strength work you've done in the past?
Sure. So, I haven't done a lot of strength work in the past, so it's a little bit difficult for me to make the comparison, but I did really like that it was very thorough. Like it's not just focused on one issue. We're building up all the strength needed for running total, like I'm doing shoulder exercises and I'm doing biceps and triceps and core strength and of course, leg muscles. I remember specifically in one time we were talking, it was early on before I had started any strength training. And I think I said to you, I should be doing like some core work, right? You're just looking at me like, yes. Yes, you should definitely be doing that. But I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that you were able to go through the progression. So we have like different levels in the strength program. And Rachel it was great to see you progress through the different levels to give you kind of more challenging exercises that you needed. And that's where what I personally like about the strength program, might be biased here since I created it, but having those different levels and progressions. And as we've really run through this, I guess this is kind of the second iteration of this program. For those that don't know, this did start out of necessity last spring when everything went into shutdown, lockdown mode. And I had to work out in my living room for 3 months. So I said, you know what, why not help other runners and show them the strength work that I've been doing for years and the stuff that's in the literature, the exercises that have been helpful to combat certain injuries. So kind of this kind of injury prevention, adding an injury prevention exercise as well as performance-based exercises. And kind of what I've learned from this is, because a lot of people are busy, and that's why I even give you more credit, is you did like the full version of the program, which was basically, depending upon where your fitness level is, some people I recommend 3 times a week, some I recommend 2. And then now, thanks to Coach Lou, he's helped streamline a 30-minute version of the Healthy Runner Strength Program. So now we have 30-minute versions of our phase 1 and our phase 2 programs, because we noticed that that was a kind of a limitation, is that it did take a lot of time, because I created it being comprehensive, like you mentioned, kind of a total body workout, but then making sure you're working your running specific muscles. And so that is a new feature in our kind of 3rd iteration of the program, as we got the kind of 30-minute version of the Healthy Runner Strength Program. So now let's get into kind of race day, kind of leading up to this past weekend. And how were you feeling going into your half marathon?
So I was feeling really excited. I was definitely nervous about the race. In particular, right before the race, I drove the course, and it was in a canyon that you go run up and then down. And as I'm driving down what I was going to run up, I was just thinking, this is scary. This is going to be really, really hard. So right before, I was feeling very apprehensive about that, but definitely excited. I mean, I was confident. I knew that I was prepared and that I had trained for it. So that was really
Yes.
helpful.
So the elevation profile was definitely different from the half marathon you did in the fall. That was like pretty much all downhill. Okay. All right. And then leading up those first couple of days, because I know we messaged each other a couple of times, I'm trying to think of the questions that you had. You had all your nutrition down, right? And kind
Yes.
of pre-race stuff. Anything that you want to share that we can share that was helpful leading up to the race day itself?
Sure. I mean, so I had a plan where I had already tested out everything that I was going to do on race day during a regular long run, down to what I ate the night before, what I ate that morning for breakfast. I did end up using Morton gels during the race, but I had used those during long runs before, so I knew it was going to work for me. I had one incident where I got really mad at my hydration pack because it started leaking on me, and I was just thinking I would do away with it and run without it. But you reminded me that hydration is really important. So I decided I found out a way to make it work, and it didn't leak on me. But I did put too much water in there. That was one mistake I made in this race. I carried around a little more water than I needed, but it was okay.
Yeah. So just think about when, races come back to where you can actually get water on the course, right? You're going to be a lot lighter, not juggling around all that water in your hydration pack. That's right. That was the big thing. I remember you had mentioned that. And I was like, when I saw that message come through, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do my hydration pack. I was like, no, no, you need hydration. That is going to be key for race day. So I'm glad that you kept your hydration on you. And for those that will be doing maybe their first, virtual half marathon or an in-person half marathon coming up since COVID happened, pretty much can't get water on the course. So you do have to plan for your hydration and bring it with you and make sure you have a good plan on how you will get that. Because again, races are going to be different than your training runs. You're going to be running faster and you're going to need the nutrition as well as hydration. So you want to make sure that you are testing your fuels just like Rachel did. And I love that you didn't try anything new on race day. So I think that was definitely key. And then, okay, so let's talk time here. So what did you wind up, or how did you feel like when you were doing the race itself? How do you feel during the race?
Yeah, during the race, I was feeling really good. I was feeling nervous about my time as I was going uphill, and I'm looking at my watch and I'm running like a 9:45 pace, and I'm trying to, my goal was to be under 8 minutes per mile, and I'm like, how am I going to make up for this? This is just, but it was, yeah, I was making sure that I didn't overdo it at the beginning uphill, and it did end up working out. So
Wow. Yeah, no, that's definitely got to be nerve wracking when you're looking at your time there. So what was your final race time?
So my final time was 1:43:13. So that was like 7:53 per mile, which I was just super excited about. During the whole race, I just wasn't sure if I was going to make it.
Wow. So that by my calculations, you shaved 2.5 minutes off of your half marathon on a harder course.
Mhm.
That is super impressive. That's a lot of time, honestly, to shave off a half marathon. So that is super impressive. So kudos to you. Congrats. And were you like totally exhausted after? You were like done?
Thank you. I was pretty tired, but it wasn't that total exhaustion. I feel like I'm going to throw up feeling. I was feeling okay. I was walking around fine. I was picking up my 3-year-old who just demanded to be held at all times. I mean, definitely tired, but feeling pretty good. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. And then how about recovery wise? What was your next couple of days looking like? Was it really tough to get out of bed the next day for those that are maybe haven't run a half marathon or they haven't done, a half marathon PR before, where they're kind of running a little faster? How did the recovery go? What that process look like?
Yeah. So the recovery went pretty well. I tried to stay moving around during the day, but I did like sit down and watch a movie that night. And when I got up, I was feeling very, some stiffness and soreness, especially like around my hip flexors. But for the most part, my recovery just went much better than the previous 2 half marathons. Of course, with the first being the extreme where I couldn't even walk around. But this recovery seemed much easier to me than my fall half marathon. And also what comes into play with that is I had learned how to recover better as far as doing foam rolling, which I had never done before I did this program. And also just making sure that I'm getting enough protein and everything. I am vegetarian, so that's something that I think about a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, so great points in terms of recovery. And I'm glad the foam rolling exercises, like one of my principles, right, for running is really taking care of the soft tissue, allowing that recovery to occur. We know that's our fourth tip in our kind of 5 tips to run strong and healthy. And so, what would you say, Rachel? What advice could you give to others if they were on the fence about working with a coach?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've really particularly loved about it is just having someone with the expertise make a custom plan for me. Because as a busy person, I do not have the time to go around surfing the internet, trying to find the best program, perhaps not finding the best program, getting injured because I'm not doing the strength exercises that I need to. And then also just, it was really nice for me to have somebody to get feedback from, someone who was encouraging me, and that was really like motivational. So I think all those aspects just make it really helpful just to have somebody who can make a custom plan for you to help you meet your goals.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. And I've mentioned this in some previous episodes. My thoughts on some of the run plans that you can get for free with your watch, the different plans that are out there. And I've seen a bunch of runners kind of following these plans, especially if you're more in the beginner stage. And a lot of these plans are really not made for novices or beginner runners. And they're way too aggressive and or not really meeting the needs that we talked about before, kind of using those principles of, not doing fast, short intervals if your goal is half marathon. So I think, that's an important point that you bring up. And yeah, time factor, right? Yeah, I am seeing that myself, and I will be the first person now that will basically realize that I don't have all the time in the world, as my time is really getting stolen every which direction, that I'm not going to spend, time looking for something that I need, even just, with kind of my business and things like that. Like, I've invested in coaching, and I can agree, it's just a whirlwind of how fast you can get to a destination, if you have someone that can guide you and kind of take you along the way, and who's helped others get there before. So I know we actually had a question about, and I don't know if you want to share this as far as sleep schedules go, Rachel, that there's a question for those that get up at 5 o'clock. What are their bedtimes? Do you want to share what your bedtime is?
Sure. Yeah, I've been trying to be in bed when I'm getting up at 5 by 9:30 at the latest, because I need my sleep.
And
Yep.
that's so important for performance recovery. Kudos to you, honestly. And I am also a 4:30 a.m. riser, and I'm fighting to go to bed at 10:30. I know that's not enough sleep. I think I shared with you when I was going through those PhD days, it was a 4 hour sleep every night. So I saw this as an improvement, but I'm still working on it. I'm now tracking it on my Garmin and seeing my sleep, and I'm really trying to get diligent with that. If you are a runner right now and you're struggling with kind of constant injuries or not knowing what to do for strength training for running, or you just need some guidance on your running and your strength programs, I help runners just like Rachel, with this high touch coach program called our Spark Back program, to become an injury-free runner. So what we do with this program is we take you through specific phases where we restore your normal movement patterns for running, we rebuild, we retrain, and then you wind up crushing your goal race, just like Rachel shared with us today, to kind of take you to that next level performance. So if you're frustrated in your training and you realize that you finally need to make a change and you need to invest in yourself, because you need to get those mental clarity runs that we all need now more than ever, and or you keep getting injured every single time, or you need some accountability to kind of hit those running goals. We're getting amazing results, just like Rachel here, and I would love to be able to help you guys and be able to guide you on that path of becoming an injury-free runner. So Rachel, let's get into our kind of our finish line. This is like the final stretch of the program. This was like you flying down the road. You were flying, by the way. Rachel was nice enough to share a video that her family took as she was coming down the final stretch to cross the finish line. So we're coming down the finish line here. And if you could change one thing about the misconception of running, or maybe getting a half marathon PR, what would that be?
So I think one misconception that I had in particular when I started getting back into running is just that I was almost even embarrassed to share my results of where I was, because I just felt like I wasn't fast enough to fit in or to call myself a runner and be in the community. And I have just learned that that is garbage, and everyone can be a runner. All you have to do is go out and run. And wherever you're at, there's always going to be people who are faster than you. And that's not that's not going to change. And I've just found such an inclusive community, and I just love that there's just room for improvement for everyone, and we're all just trying to work to get better, and we can help each other along the way. One other misconception that I had and do struggle with a lot is that I really always wanted to push it on my long runs. I wanted to run my long runs, not like races, but pretty fast every week. And even coming into my race this time, I would feel like, oh, I don't know if I can keep this pace up for this long, because I never did it in a long run. But it was so much better for me that I ran my long runs at a conversation pace like I was supposed to, because I wasn't overtraining and wearing myself out all the time. And I think that really helped me to improve. So I'd say that's something very big that I learned from being in the program.
Yeah, no, this is gold. Oh my goodness. You just like recapped so many important things. So thank you for sharing that. And as you guys know, I feel the same way, that anyone can run, and we all consider ourselves non-runners, or we still do. That's, which, like you said, is garbage, right? If you're out there running, and I get so many people who even commented to me today. We were messaging back and forth, and they said, I jog. I'm like, no, you run, you run. And even looking at those paces, right? We always try to, I guess, downplay our abilities. And if you're out there and you're putting, you're pounding the pavement, and you are a runner. And thank you so much for sharing your story, Rachel. Honestly, it has been, I've told you this before, it's been absolute pleasure working with you. Like I said, I'm so proud of the commitment that you dedicated to this aspect of your life. And I'm sure has it helped other aspects of your life kind of going through this? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's helped me just to feel like there are things that I can accomplish and check off my list. I think especially this goes for like common housework, like laundry, and also my dissertation. You just work and work on these things, and they're never finished. But with running, I had very specific, like, okay, I did this workout, check, and I've done my strength training, and it just, I don't know, it was very stress relieving for me. It was important me time, and I just really valued all of my time that I spent training. Yeah.
Nice. And yeah, no, I think it gives us that outlet, right, that we need in our lives. So if you are, a busy mom out there, a busy dad, and you're juggling everything with the kids, and you think like, I don't have time to dedicate to this, sometimes getting a little structure and guidance is really what you need to be able to be the best version of yourself for the family. Right. So you can be rejuvenated. And I talk to my students about this all the time. When they're kind of going through grad school, is you need that downtime, right? That me time. And for us as runners, it's running, right? It's getting in our strength work. And Coach Latoya says #me time. Yes. So I know you know all about that. Like this morning for me, Coach Latoya, I was listening to our Healthy Runner 2021 Spotify playlist. Shakira came on, Hips Don't Lie. And I was doing my hip exercises in our strength program. So I was doing my standing clamshells to get my deep hip external rotators. And I was pumped up, and I was having me time, having Shakira in my ears. Right. So we all need that me time. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story, Rachel. It's been so great working with you. And if Rachel's story resonates with you, I hope you took away something from her story tonight that can be helpful, right? And I think it's sometimes easier to hear from someone else's perspective than some of the principles and the teachings that I do on a weekly basis, to hear like a real life person kind of share through their lens of kind of what they went through. And let's all give Rachel a huge shout out by dropping some hearts, giving her some likes on Facebook here, and thanking her for taking her time. She's got like no time, right? She's got a dissertation. She's probably got laundry in the back that we can't see, right? And so we appreciate you taking your time tonight, Rachel. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, Duane. It's been fun.
Yeah. And guys, remember, every week we go live within our Healthy Runner Facebook group. So keep us in mind in your schedule. And as always, guys, stay active, stay healthy, and just keep running. Until next time.